Мгм. Мікрофончик включите, не забудете. Перше травня.
It's May the 1st. Ukraine Media Center confirms starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Chaparenko, and now we will be talking about the appropriate behavior in churches and outdoors during Easter. So the safety protocols for Easter. Our guest today is Anatolii Shkarbuta, Deputy Head of the Prevention Unit of the Fire Safety Office of the Emergencies Prevention Department of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, and Alexander Horunzhy, Press Officer of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. So, Ms. Anatolii, good morning. The Easter is coming. In just a couple of days, everybody is going to the temples, to the churches, gathering in big groups with families. So what is advice of State Emergency Service to make sure that you have less work during these holidays and the holidays pass in a safe manner? Good morning. Yes, the Easter holidays are coming, which means a lot of gatherings to celebrate, which may result in growth of risk of emergency situations and fires, as long as the celebration is related to the use of the open fire and recreation outside. In order to avoid and reduce the risk of emergencies and fires, everybody is strongly recommended to adhere to the safety rules, both the civilians and clergy. So for the church workers, it's recommended to prepare their facilities to potential emergencies because the Russian aggression significantly increases the risk of such situations. So the church workers are supposed to search their facilities to ensure fire safety of the churches and to study the instructions for the case of emergencies, which will reduce the risk of emergencies and fires in those places. The most attention should be paid to the places where the open fire is used. I mean, chandeliers and other methods used during the rites. All those places are not supposed to be equipped with the all those places are supposed to be equipped with fire extinguishers, and the church workers are supposed to ensure the lack of concentration of people in those places. Well, just like the experience of previous holidays showcases, everybody will be able to sanctify their Easter breads. Also, please be careful with the lampades and candles. Please avoid chaos, avoid huddling, and adhere to the regime and recommendations provided by the clergy. So again, everybody will have time to sanctify their Easter bread, just like always. Also, our people usually celebrate Easter outside, which may result in growth of fires. So please be careful while celebrating outside, because first of all, the territories that are under constant shelling and those that were recently deoccupied pose the biggest threat. This is why the concentration of people in the areas along the front lines in the churches would be irrelevant. Please listen to recommendations of the local governments. They know which territories are still mined, which are safer, and by adhering to those recommendations, we will be able to avoid fires and other emergencies. So does the State Emergency Service inspect the churches to make sure they're all equipped with the fire extinguishers, especially during such periods as the pre-Easter period? Yes, that's a mandatory procedure. The representatives of State Emergency Service visit the temples, the churches, we brief the clergy, we inspect the facilities, we provide recommendations about what measures should be taken to avoid the fires and emergencies, and thus we, at least partially, may reduce the risk of such emergencies. Thank you, Mr. Anatolii. I would like to invite Mr. Alexander to the floor and ask him to what extent is State Emergency Service ready to make sure that the holidays pass in a safe measure, in a safe manner, I'm sorry, not only Easter holidays, but the period afterwards. Do you have enough capabilities to make it sure for the time being? Good morning, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. A little bit more, let me add, about briefings and work with the churches. I would like to mention that before the Easter, we've already, I mean, the representatives of State Emergency Service have already conducted more than 13,000 briefings with the clergy and other workers of the churches. That's an absolutely important component, and as the practice showcases, such briefings are not irrelevant, they are really efficient. All of the representatives of clergy, they are properly briefed on proper use of fire extinguishers and other fire extinguishing devices. I have to mention that starting from the beginning of the year, there were 12 fires in churches, and if we compare it with this similar period of the previous year, the number of fires was 24. So in fact, we have 2 times reduction of the documented fires, specifically in churches in year 24 compared to year 23. So what should the churches be equipped with? They should be equipped with the fire extinguishing systems and relevant notification systems. People have to comply with the rules of behavior with open fire. The candles should be installed in the distance at least 1 meter from combustible agents or devices. Make sure the candles don't fall, which may result in fire. Again, the churches are the structures which are sometimes made of wood, and the fire spreads quite quickly over such facilities, so the immediate action is required in case of emergency. We really get prepared for the Easter holidays, and here we have more than 7,000 rescuers on duty, as well as more than 200 pieces of fire extinguishing and other equipment and machinery. In case of necessity, those capabilities may be increased at the expense of available reserve. In case of necessary situation, we coordinate our units in a way to get the reserves engaged and to mitigate the emergency within the shortest term possible. What else should be emphasized? The shelters. Every citizen, before they visit the church, they are supposed to get familiarized using the DIA application, where is the nearest shelter, to make sure that in case of necessity they may take advantage of this shelter and wait until the air raid alert is all clear. The rescuers will be working in coordination with the local governments, with the military administrations and national police to coordinate the joint actions for case of emergencies. We have plans for mitigation of emergencies in churches. We inspect the sources of fire hydrants in the place of location of the churches. We've established the routes for movement of the state emergency services in case of fires and other emergencies in those facilities. Another important aspect I need to draw everyone's attention to is that after the celebration of the Easter, in a week, the commemoration days are coming, and again, before going to the cemetery, the civilians should find out from the local governments whether the cemeteries are inspected by the State Emergency Service to have all of the unexploded ordnance removed from there. So please make sure there are no explosive devices there, and only after this information is made available to you. You know, the technology is such that it's not only the State Emergency Service but also National Police Pyrotechnics, the miners of the National Guard and other operators of mine activity inspect the land plots, and then they canalize all of the information to the local governments. Thus, the local governments, they are aware which cemeteries are safe for visiting by the civilians. In general, due to Russian aggression, we have about 156 square kilometers of area densely mined by the Russians. Unfortunately, according to the Secretariat of the Mine Action, since the beginning of the full-scale Russian aggression, 297 people, including 15 children, have died, and 697, including 89 children, were injured as a result of explosion of previously unexploded ordnance. Again, with the beginning of the full-scale Russian aggression, we were able to defuse more than 490,000 explosive devices, including 3,352 aviation bombs. We've inspected the territory of about 129,000 hectares. That's a vast territory inspected by our State Emergency Service personnel, where the explosive devices were detected and diffused. Our units are mostly engaged in work in Kharkiv, Donetsk, Mykolaiv, and Kherson regions. What's important is that the State Emergency Service increased both the personnel before the war. We had up to 600 pyrotechnics working with us. Now we have about 1,900. We've increased the number of vacancies up to 1,900, and in fact there are currently about 1,200 pyrotechnics working in the fields, not only basically in the fields, but all over the territory of Ukraine, and they are supported with the mechanized demining machines. And with the beginning of the works, with the start of Russian aggression, we had 873 hectares cleared with the use of those specific machines. If before the big war we had 0 such machines, currently we have 38 of them. What else I would like to add? That generally I would like to urge all of the civilians, specifically those living in the areas close to the front lines, those recently deoccupied areas, that now it's not recommended to visit the forest because the key infrastructure facilities, all of the capabilities of State Emergency Service are aimed at demining of such infrastructural facilities as water lines, electricity lines, roads, railroads, and so on and so forth. And not all of the forests can be inspected. Basically, that's a huge territory, 156 square kilometers, so people are strongly recommended, specifically those living in the areas close to the front lines, please abstain from visiting the forests. And I think that, you know, the picnic can wait until that moment that we will be able to search all of the territories. Again, all of the information is available for the local governments. Well, when you were mentioning the cemeteries, you said it's recommended to provide the advice from the local governments. People, they are used to the fact that the fields, the forest can be mined, but talking about cemeteries, they like people probably are not aware of a lot of such cases. Can you please provide us with the examples where the unexploded ordnance was detected in the cemeteries? Well, sure, I cannot give you the exact example, but I know for sure that our pyrotechnics were demining the cemeteries, and they were finding not only mines there, but other unexploded ordnance such as mortar bombs, artillery shells, those petal shells that are very hard to notice, the infantry mines, and other explosive devices. So just like other mine action operators, we provide all of the information to the local governments so they can identify whether the cemetery is safe for visiting and where it still poses a threat, and it's recommended not to visit it. And yet another thing I want to draw everyone's attention to again, you see what the weather is like, and unfortunately we keep documenting the cases when people burn the dry grass. People don't listen to our advice, and we see there is a trend to increase of the number of fires in ecosystems. So here I would like to urge our civilians again, please stop this practice, please stop burning the grass, the dry grass, and violating the fire safety rules. There is administrative sanction for this, and just on a humane terms, like we concentrate all of the capabilities to mitigate the consequences of Russian aggression, to mitigate all those things, the evacuation of people, the mitigation of explosions, of rocket strikes, and the fires in ecosystems. They usually, they require involvement of a lot of personnel and material of state emergency service. So please, once again, don't burn the dry grass and don't violate the fire safety rules in our ecosystems. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on the floor? Good morning, Maria Konchar, Ukrinform. I'm having a question to Mr. Anatolii Shkarbuta. Could you please tell us, since the beginning of the year, what was the number of fires that erupted in open territories and in natural ecosystems? Are there any casualties? And what are the civilians supposed to do while staying and celebrating Easter outside? Yes, this year we have the increased number of fires in ecosystems. For the time being, we have documented more than 11,500 such fires. More than 7.5 thousand hectares of ecosystems and forests are damaged with fires. Currently, there are 9 casualties, including 5 dead and 4 injured as a result of the fires in the ecosystems. And what was the other question? The recommendations for the civilians while celebrating Easter outside. During such period, it's recommended not to visit the ecosystems. And again, when it's class 4 or 5 of fire threat, it's prohibited even to visit the forest. It may result in administrative penalties, specifically during the wartime. The visits to ecosystems is not desired, but if it just happens, so please comply with the rules of fire safety. First of all, if you drive outside, please don't put your car where there are dry orchards or where there is dry vegetation, it may result in fire. Also, making a fire in natural ecosystems is absolutely prohibited. The local governments allocate specific places of recreation for this, where people can make fires and use different devices for making barbecues. Again, in natural ecosystems, all such activities are prohibited during this spring period. Thank you, Mr. Anatolii. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Oh, we have another question on the floor. Yes, the question to Mr. Alexander Horozhin. Can you please remind the people about the behavior with unexploded ordnance in case they stumble upon them? You know how we explain it to the children so everyone remembers. If you see a suspicious device, don't come close, don't touch it, call 101. And again, I want to emphasize specifically in the areas close to the front lines. Please don't visit the forest lines, the fields. Always move across the solid surfaces. We document a lot of cases when the Russians use the cluster bombs. They are small, they're difficult to notice, but they result in a lot of harm to health, including the lethal cases. And the same may be related to the aquatories, because more than 13,000 square kilometers of aquatories are contaminated with mines in Ukraine. The deminer divers work there on demining. This is why, again, the basic advice is just like I told you. Again, we have this application, Demine in Ukraine. It's efficient, it works. There is a map where there are marks on all over the potentially contaminated areas. You can submit an application through the application and it will automatically identify the location. So if you see a suspicious device, please walk away at least 100 meters in the same direction that you were approaching. Desirable like trace and trace, because usually close to one unexploded ordnance there might be more explosive devices. And mark the place with some bright rag or something you may find nearby and call 101. And again, demining, diffusing is the job of the professionals exclusively. Please believe me, we were visiting Kherson region the other day and we were getting applications from the citizens, like there was an artillery shell in the courtyard, mortar bomb, a suspicious device, and so on and so forth. All those applications were fulfilled by our pyrotechnics and they mitigate the threat that exists there for the people. So that's my basic advice. Thank you very much for the explanation. Let me remind everybody we were talking about the fire safety measures during Easter's, and we wish everybody safe and happy Easter. We will continue our operation at 12 o'clock. We will talk about the unblocking of Polish borders and preparation to the Easter holidays.